All right, everybody, let me make this quick. My goal in this video is to save you time. HIMS is down after earnings, after Q2 is down 13%. 13% is really nothing for a movement on HIMS stock. It hasn't moved a lot. I've been covering this stock for years. I've been in this stock since the $6 range. We've had much bigger moves on HIMS. So the price action at minus 13% for this one stock is nothing at all. So the 15 takeaways, let's get started. So the call, Andrew spent a lot of time talking about how they want the HIMS and Hearse platforms to be a platform where eventually people come without issues. They go to the platform eventually because they want to have preventative care. This is aligned with a long-term vision of health that HIMS has had and that I've had of healthcare. You may remember my early videos, I was calling healthcare sick care and I was calling HIMS healthcare. The whole idea is if you want to prevent any of the bigger issues, that happen in your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, if you want to prevent those issues from happening, you have to address the more minor issues early on, and that's what HIMS does. HIMS addresses minor issues. People come to HIMS from minor issues. If minor issues get addressed, hopefully they don't have big issues in the future. Like if you're pre-diabetic and you go HIMS for weight loss, and you lose weight, maybe you'll never be diabetic. And maybe if you're never diabetic, you're not going to die after 9 months of dialysis. This is the goodness of this company. This is how important it is to have a company take care of these minor issues early on. And the goal for the company is to be even earlier, to have people come at the very beginning of their health journey. And this is where longevity comes in, by the way. I talked in my prior video about longevity at HIMS. They didn't discuss longevity on the call, but they had this slide where they showed a clear longevity offering at some point. People who are perfectly healthy, perfectly fine, will go to HIMS to get longevity prescriptions. And there's a lot of medications that you can take before any issue even arise, like metformin, for example. Anyways, moving on. So let's talk about point number 2 in the call, personalized GLP-1 treatments. 3 days ago, HIMS released a study talking about how personalized GLP-1s worked better. The CEO talked about that on the call, shared some of the data on the call, 10% better or something like that, and said that they're determined to help the clients, help the customers get personalized GLPs because personalized GLPs work better. This is not surprising. This is the era we live in, one-to-one. The idea of customer segmentation, and you group people into categories and you try to have 500 milligram of XYZ drug because 500 milligram or 1 gram is what it comes with, and so that segment you're going to give 500 milligram, the other segment you're going to give a gram. Like, that's ridiculous. HIMS personalizes treatment one-to-one. We are unique. Everybody is unique, especially in health. This is especially true when you're trying to avoid side effects, to customize. You customize to avoid side effects. This is the future of healthcare. I fundamentally believe that. The CEO believes that. They reiterated the long-term target. It's so sweet to hear this. It's a goodness to hear that they have a long-term target of 6.5 billion in revenue, 1.3 billion in EBITDA. To give you an idea, the stock right now, after the drop, is trading at 12 billion. Would I buy at 55? Probably not. I would probably buy under 50 if I were to get back in HIMS. Like I said, this is not a big drop for HIMS, but it's still dirt cheap, right? I mean, you're talking about a 9x EBITDA for 2030. By the way, that was not 2025, that was 2030 target. So you're talking about a business which in my view is very cheap. So they reiterated their long-term target, 6.5 billion. That's going to be a company that will be at about 2x sales. So anyways, look at the numbers. Keep in mind they have a history of sandbagging, even though they did not sandbag this time. Okay, lab testing. So lab testing, the first implementation of lab testing will be for testosterone. That's what I had guessed in my video earlier in the day, and that's obvious. That's why they acquired it, because you can't do hormone replacement therapy if you don't do labs. You have to do labs, and so that's why they acquired it. But interestingly, they see lab testing to be a big unit on its own at some point. And on its own at some point, labs testing will be a big unit. Andrew discussed about how trad health as the range is wrong. When you go to the doctor, you get a physical, maybe the doctor orders like 10 labs for you, 5 labs, whatever. And then they tell you, oh, everything's fine, you're in normal range. Well, those ranges of quote unquote normal Americans, those ranges suck. You don't want to be normal, because being normal means you may be more likely to have heart disease, etc. Plus, those ranges are totally not customized. You're looking at averages. You're not looking at you're not looking at any specifics from the client. So customized ranges, customized recommendation, you can do that with AI, and you can help your client adjust. And the idea of a range is kind of outdated, and it's kind of an artifact of the limitations of stats of back in the day. They say your BMI should be between 18 and 25, for example. Well, I would argue a BMI of 20 is much healthier than a BMI of 24.8, even though a doctor would tell you 24.8 and 20 are the same thing based on the range. So the ranges may be wrong for just about everything, and you could have a much narrower customized range for any aspect of metabolic health, lipids, the fats, all of that sort of stuff. So I see this also as possibly being a big unit. AI is expanding. They're hiring. They're investing in AI. Coaches are going to be the first implementation of AI. For example, you could have a coach that helps you resist eating more food, that helps you with your anxiety. Why a coach, right? Because you can't really have an AI prescribe today. It's not possible. You can't have that today. You need to have a medical professional prescribe. But if you know how the HIMSS platforms works, you know that the AI is still showing to the medical professional options, and it's showing option number 1, option number 2, option number 3. And then the medical professional can just click on option number 1 or number 2. The medical professional is essentially there at this point to monitor the suggestion and to make sure that the suggestion of the AI is right. That's essentially what it is, or change the suggestion. But at some point, will there be a future where it's AI prescribing? Well, I can tell you, I would much rather to have that future where AI is prescribing, because when you look at all of the data of AI, humanity's last exam, but not just that. Like look at the board, look at the score that they get on boards, look at how AI are better at just about all aspects of health professions. AI are better, and AI are also much more empathetic. And so I think eventually we'll have AI prescribe. And once AI prescribe, once the law changes, and that will happen, and AI prescribes, which company, which brand do you think will be the most likely to benefit? Well, I believe a brand like HIMSS will be the most likely to benefit. Keep in mind they are their own patients record, their own health record management. They have everything in the back end, full IT stack. Everything is developed. Like who do you think is gonna develop the AI for care? Is it gonna be like Epic, a private company who's really behind, who barely has AI notes yet? Or is it gonna be a modern company who takes that on? I think it's gonna be a company like HIMSS who takes that on. Zava, let's talk about the Zava acquisition. Of course, the Zava acquisition is not new, although it was reported as new on X, and it really upsetted me. That's engagement forming when you're reporting this as new, and it's not new. And I think a lot of the initial drop in the stock price might have been because of that. People are reporting it as new. The only thing that was new is like a $40 million delta between what we thought they paid and what they actually paid. That's the only thing that was new, and people are reporting this as new, and this get 20,000, 30,000 views. That's not a new news. That's like more than a month old. Anyways, the Zava acquisition will help with the EU, with the Canada expansion, and eventually their backend, everything they have built, will help with Latin America, and they even threw Asia in there, which I was very surprised. Latin America, I totally get, because it's so close to the U.S. Judeo-Christian habits, culture, etc. So I totally get LATAM. Asia, I was very impressed. Like you think you could go to Asia. I mean, this is among the most protective areas. So I'm not sure if they really meant Asia. Latin America is logical to me. Latin America is logical that we would go there at some point. 2.4 million subscribers is what they have, and out of those 2.4 million, 1.5 million is getting a customized treatment, i.e., they're likely to stick with it because it's customized to you. You have less side effects. You feel better because the product is for you. Not everyone has the same drug as you, etc., etc. So there's a lot of benefits. The growth, like I said, sales growth, I said that in my prior video, the growths are growing still very fast at 73%. It looks like for a full year, they will be at about 45% growth year over year for a full year. So when we had Q3 and Q4, about 45% growth. This is roughly what I had in my spreadsheet, more or less. I guess it's not a big beat on guidance. That's like the one disappointing thing about that. But we understand why, right? And that's because we're taking a huge hit with the end of branded semaglutide. That's the reason why. And so that was to be expected at some point. And we went up on GLP-1 trend, and now we're taking, frankly, a very minor drop on the end of branded GLP-1. Subscriber growth is still very healthy at 31%. And again, the delta here can be explained by the average basket per customer increasing. Customers are increasing, but existing customers are buying more and more products. And so you may end up at a point, I think their average from a prior call was something like 1.5 products per customer. It could be, maybe you'll have 3 products per customers at some point. Who knows? Anyways, they mentioned the number of medical professionals on the platform. 1,500 medical professionals on the platform. Again, they don't detail which medical professional it is. I assume that a lot of those medical professionals are nurse practitioners. Nurse practitioners kind of like one level below MD. But I also know they have MDs, and so it probably all depends. They probably have a system where if it's an easy case, it's going to go to a nurse practitioner. Whereas if it's a little harder case, it's going to go to the MD. But either way, the AI assists in the prescription. The reason why it's important to know this is that it creates network effects. They now have 1,500 providers. That's a lot of people, and so you have a dual-sided network effects. Like kind of like Uber or Lyft or like a dating site or something like that, where you have a two-sided platform. But of course, it's like one provider. Divide 2.4 million by the number of providers, and you'll see these providers are likely very, very active, and they make money. These providers. You can go fast. You can go fast and click fast, and you can see dozens and dozens of patients in an hour. You can go much faster than in a regular brick and mortar physical office. So that's also the efficiency of the system is second to none. They talk about the ED segment. This was disappointing to me. It's Yemi who talked about this. His voice was a little down. I was actually surprised to hear. I mean, I'm not surprised because the advertising in the ED segment is insane. I mean, you get all sorts of ads all the time online for this stuff. It's pretty insane. So the competition is there, and they are not the cheapest, of course. And I think that's still their lower thing. I think they're like $45 a month or something. They are kind of a premium offering in the ED space. And you can go much cheaper, and yeah, that's it. You can go much cheaper, and so they're not the cheaper ones. So it's seeing some headwinds. This is a change from what Yemi had said. Was it a year and a half ago, where he had said there still were original ED customers who still had their prescriptions and who still were getting it through the mail. So you probably are seeing only the least faithful customer leave, or even better. Maybe the ED customer maybe got on a GLP-1, maybe got a little coaching, and maybe all of a sudden the GLP-1 means you lose weight, and maybe they get they have a statin product for heart health. Maybe the health of a customer is improving, and so maybe they realize, oh wait a minute, I don't need ED anymore. I don't need ED treatment anymore because I've lost the weight and I'm taking this statin for heart health. So this is all very linked. Anyways, it's not too annoying to see that, but still, it's noteworthy. Cash balance was over 1.1 billion. Of course, we had a big cash intake with the convertible bond. Remember that convertible bond, $1 billion. But we spent 260 million of it for the Zava acquisition. So all in all, this is an anti-fragile company. 1.1 billion. They can withstand a lot of stuff with that type of money. Some questions in the call about the Canadian market. Of course, we're going to enter the Canadian market with generic semaglutide because Novo did not file to renew the patent. Novo did not pay $250 to renew the patent. This is rent-seeking at its best. You got to save the $250 for the Novo shareholder, so they did not renew the patent, and therefore they lost the exclusivity in the Canadian market. And so generic semaglutide is coming to Canada, and Hims specifically is launching this in 2026, early 2026. And it looks like they will be sourcing the generic semaglutide from abroad, but not in the USA. So they will be sourcing it from an outside of the USA manufacturer, and therefore they will be very careful to not have the product go via the US. And that's, I guess, how you avoid any fear of tariffs for Hims. I mean, don't get me wrong, this stock, I'm sure, will see some movement if there's any tariffs on pharma. I mean, the market is just the way it is. It sells on baskets. But you can see they will not be subject to the tariffs if, of course, the semaglutide that is sent to Canada comes from another region of the world, unless Canada starts putting tariff against everybody on its own. It seems like this is going to be a non-issue, but that was nonetheless a question on the call. And anytime a health stock is, you listen to any health stock call, you're going to have your token tariff question. This is always a tariff question on the healthcare pharmaceutical stock. So I'm not sure if that analyst follows too closely. But anyways, so one question about the Hearse business that was interesting. Nothing too new though. It's a much smaller business, of course. I think they have a few 100,000 customers over there, but it's mostly dermatology and anxiety, and these are the top two categories for women. I was surprised to not see hair loss be a big category in there. Maybe you didn't mention it. Maybe it just wasn't mentioned on the call. They're pretty excited about the menopause treatment coming to the Hearse business. If you haven't watched my video that I made on menopause, it's actually fascinating. I think they will have a hit as far as personalization goes on menopause, because in that video I go through all of the menopause drugs, and I think it's something like between 15 and 17 different possible menopause drugs, and typically how it works is you go to the doctor, they try one, they try another one, and then you end up quickly having someone go for menopause and they take 5 different drugs, and it may or it may not work. So their AI, their compounding capability, their ability to put like 6 or 7 active drugs into a single pill, I think is going to have a major impact. And so I'm glad to see them start actually with menopause. Perhaps a more understood, less stigmatized approach to hormone treatments, because that's more testosterone still have a little stigma in the US, and so that's something that we will have to overcome at this point. And get ready. Right back in the day, the company was dismissed as an ED company. Get ready. Maybe the next wave is going to be them being dismissed as, oh, you're just a low T company or whatever, something like that. Anyways, generic semaglutide in Canada will be cheap, between $75 and $100. So, about 50% cheaper than what it was in the US during the good old days of compounding. Anyways, cheaper over there, good for Canada. The last one is 15.15 here. We talked about the guide for weight loss, and the guide for weight loss is what? Well, the guide is $725 million guide, and that guide was maintained, and that was a Q1 guide, and they maintained it. but they did note that there should be a change in the mix. And talking about namely how revenue is recognized right now, they recognize a lot of the revenue up front because they can ship, six months worth of doses or even more than that in a single time. And because of the difference between a 503A and 503B, they will not be able to ship it all at once. So they're gonna have to put the shipments more spread out the shipments. So that's one aspect that could change the mix in the short term. But actually, this was Yemi answering this question. And Andrew came back on the call and talking about how, this is going to include, of course, liraglutide. It'd be great to have detail on the success of liraglutide. I would presume it's highly successful, especially as you start seeing micro-dosing GLP-1 ads over the internet. This liraglutide is very similar to that. It's a less potent GLP-1, perhaps a GLP-1 that can be handled much better by a different customer segment. But anyways, they also emphasize, of course, the oral part of the mix, which is your metformin and bupropion mix. I believe they also have one version of it with some antidepressant who has a side effect of weight loss that they add to the mix. But again, customized pill for weight loss. And they did mention that the non-GLP, i.e. just the oral pills, right, the metformin-based pill, they did mention that it was still above 100 million. And that's what they had said the last time. The last time they had said they were making more than 100 million in sales on non-GLPs. But when they mentioned that, it was just a yes. So my guess is it's probably more. It's probably more now, right? The analysts did not ask how much of that mix is non-GLP-1s. And back then, when they had mentioned 100 million, it was something they were already doing. So my guess is that the non-GLP solution is picking up, and again, if you've never been on metformin, it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty darn. It's got a lot of benefits. So anyways. Not health advice, right? This is you gotta see a doctor. Go see a doctor. But this is and this is of course I think the fact that they sell metformin I think is going to be very interesting, especially as they develop a longevity offering, as I've said in my prior video. So these were all of the new nuggets. All of the new nuggets that I see for this call, and hopefully I was able to kind of tell you them in a quick podcast form. Sorry for the lack of visuals today, just a podcast form. So this was not financial advice, not investment advice, not health advice. This is only entertainment, only entertainment. I'm an entertainer. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.